What are we doing to stop American weapons going to Mexico to arm their gangs?
Well, we need to support that on both sides.
Well,
Weapons
what are
coming
you
in
doing?
and out of the
What are you
country.
doing to support it on our side?
We are arresting people who have illegal firearms in our country. We're not sending people back to Mexico with guns. We're throwing them in our jails and
No,
prosecuting them.
you're allowing them to be purchased in the United States and driven across the border. Most of these gangs have completely turn themselves into military organizations because they're using American weapons, American technology, and your argument is that, well, we're not doing anything about that.
No, not my argument. That was the policy of the last 4 years of the Biden administration with open borders. You could come back and forth across our borders. You could buy guns. You could take guns off the street. You could shoot people in our country. You could bring fentanyl into our country. You could bring methamphetamine into our country. You could bring cocaine into our country. That was the previous administration.
No.
Not this
What
one.
are you doing to stop the flow of weapons into Mexico?
What we just witnessed was more than a policy debate. It was a national security alarm. Senator Jack Reed didn't mince words. He called out Attorney General Pam Bondi for letting machine gun-like devices slip through the cracks of our laws. These so-called forced reset triggers, they can empty a 30-round magazine in under 4 seconds. A weapon of war disguised as a rifle accessory. Reed, a veteran who's fired automatic weapons himself, knew exactly what that means. Chaos on American streets. Instead of answers, Bondi gave spin. She pivoted to immigration, blamed drugs, and ignored the fact that American-made weapons are arming cartels across the border. Reed pressed harder, exposing the contradiction. If the border's closed, why are U.S. Army units still stationed there? Bondi had no real response. That silence spoke louder than words, because this wasn't just about one device. It was about a DOJ willing to sacrifice safety for politics.
Madam Attorney General, on May 16th, the Department of Justice announced that it dropped litigation to enforce the law against forced reset triggers. These are devices that can be installed in a few minutes on guns like a AR-15 in order to match the rate of fire of a machine gun. In fact, according to demonstrations on YouTube and elsewhere, you can dispose of an entire 30-round magazine in about 4 seconds, so it is a fully automatic weapon. In the press release announcing the settlement, you are quoted as saying the settlement, quote, will enhance public safety. How does putting more automatic weapons, which have been against the law since the 1930s, enhance public safety?
Thank you for that question, Senator Reed. What that will do, it will enhance public safety by settling the litigation, because it is a guarantee that the manufacturer will not put that in handguns. We settled those cases because it was the right decision under the law. Nothing's comical about this. These devices are materially the same as bump stocks. The Supreme Court said last year that they are not machine guns under federal law. We followed the law. We will continue to follow the law. I'm a career prosecutor. I'm going to do everything in my power to keep Americans safe. What we should be concerned about up here are all the illegal guns flowing into our country by illegal aliens who have been free to walk into our country over the past 4 years. And we have taken thousands of those guns off of the street, including drugs, and including violent criminals.
Excuse me. How can you go ahead and say we're more safe today because they will not put these automatic firing devices in pistols, which have magazines of about maybe 20 rounds at most, or maybe 10, and have a range much less than an automatic weapon? Have you ever fired an automatic weapon?
I have.
Well, you understand then that that's a device that was designed to kill people. It's not a hunting rifle. It's not a target rifle. It's mass fire. And you made a compromise saying, well, don't put them in pistols, but you can go ahead and put them out in automatic weapons.
We followed the law. We will continue to follow the law. You and I clearly disagree on the Second Amendment.
Well, I agree that machine guns are not appropriate in the United States, and since 1930 or so, we've outlawed machine guns. And these semi-automatic weapons that are produced in volume so easily converted to automatic weapons that it's you're ignoring the reality, frankly.
I'm following the law,
Well,
Senator.
yes, that's right. By the way, how many American weapons are going into Mexico in a year? What are we doing to stop American weapons going to Mexico to arm their gangs?
Well, we need to support that on both sides.
Well,
Weapons
what are
coming
you
in and
doing?
out of the
What are you
country.
doing to support it on our side?
We are arresting people who have illegal firearms in our country. We're not sending people back to Mexico with guns. We're throwing them in our jails and
No,
prosecuting them.
you're allowing them to be purchased in the United States and driven across the border. Most of these gangs have completely turn themselves into military organizations because they're using American weapons, American technology, and your argument is that, well, we're not doing anything about them.
No, not my argument. That was a policy of the last 4 years of the Biden administration with open borders. You could come back and forth across our borders. You could buy guns. You could take guns off the street. You could shoot people in our country. You could bring fentanyl into our country. You could bring methamphetamine into our country. You could bring cocaine into our country. That was the previous administration.
No,
not this
What
one.
are you doing to stop the flow of weapons into Mexico?
We are arresting flow of weapons into, our borders are closed. We are arresting illegal
really?
cartels. Sinaloa from Mexico, MS-13 from El Salvador, TDA. We are arresting from Venezuela. ATF has seized over 14,600 guns since Donald Trump has been president. That's a 33% increase from the last administration. And think about that. That's with our borders secure.
Were they coming into
So they weren't doing anything.
Were they coming into the United States?
Our borders are closed. They're not coming in or out of the United States now across Mexico. We've done a 33% increase in firearm seizures. Think about that. Think about that, Senator, from the last administration. 33% increase. And our borders are closed. So we're getting all these guns off the streets that came into our country. And I'm so proud of the work of the men and women in law enforcement.
I don't think you've done anything to severely interrupt the arming of Mexican gangs, because that's really not what your focus, and I think your focus should be on that. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And can I just add one thing? And
No,
because
excuse
the
me.
borders are closed, we are stopping the guns from going to Mexico.
Well, let me ask you another question. If the borders are closed, why do we have a division headquarters of the United States Army in Fort Huachuca and military elements across the board when the borders closed and Border Patrol can handle it?
As former military, I would think you would know the answer to that, to keep Americans safe.
No, I think it's to promote the president's policies on the border, and the readiness of our forces is suffering as a result. Thank you.
This isn't politics. This isn't some abstract policy debate. When Senator Jack Reed took his seat across from Attorney General Pam Bondi, he wasn't there to make headlines. He was there to expose a dangerous truth. The Department of Justice, the very institution tasked with protecting Americans, is making us less safe. Reed, a West Point graduate, a veteran who's fired automatic weapons in combat training, came prepared with facts, with lived experience, and with one simple, devastating question. How does putting more machine gun-like weapons on American streets make us safer? Bondi's answer, a legal technicality, a hollow recital of statutes and compliance language. She claimed it was about following the law, insisted it would enhance public safety. But Reed wasn't buying it, and neither should the American people, because the device at the heart of this fight isn't some obscure gadget. It's called a forced reset trigger, and what it does is terrifying. With one installed, an AR-15 rifle can empty a 30-round magazine in under 4 seconds. 4 seconds. That's faster than most trained soldiers can fire a belt-fed weapon. It mimics automatic fire, the exact kind of firepower that's been illegal for civilian ownership since the 1930s, when Congress banned machine guns after bloody gang wars left streets running red. Yet, under Bondi's DOJ, these devices aren't banned. They're regulated with loopholes, settled in court, allowed to exist on America's streets as long as manufacturers promise not to attach them to handguns. as if that makes the next mass shooting somehow more manageable. Jack Reed knows better. He's fired M16s and M60s. He knows what automatic fire sounds like, what it does to a target, how it turns one man with a weapon into a small army. He looked Bondi in the eye and said what millions of Americans know. These aren't hunting rifles. These aren't for sport shooting. These are tools of mass killing. Instead of grappling with that reality, Bondi pivoted. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about U.S. manufacturers making battlefield weapons available to civilians. It was about drugs, about illegal immigration, about anything but the uncomfortable truth that her department had waved these devices onto the market. Reed didn't let her escape, because here's the truth she refuses to confront. American guns aren't just fueling massacres here at home. They're flooding across the border into Mexico. Cartels like Sinaloa and CJNG are arming themselves, not with smuggled Russian rifles or Chinese knockoffs, but with American-made AR-15s and AK variants, bought legally in U.S. gun shops. They cross the border in bulk. They show up in cartel videos, where armored convoys patrol Mexican highways. They are found at crime scenes where journalists, police officers, and families are slaughtered. And yet, when Reed asked Bondi what she was doing to stop the flow of U.S. weapons south, her answers were vague, defensive. She rattled off statistics, bragged about ATF seizures. But seizures happen after the fact, after the guns are already bought, trafficked, and often after lives are lost. What Reed demanded was prevention. What he got was spin. Then Reed pressed even harder. If the border is, as Bondi claimed, closed, why does the U.S. Army still maintain a full division at Fort Huachuca? Why are military units deployed to the southern border? Not for show, but for readiness. Bondi dodged again. She shifted to talking points about numbers of arrests, about drug interdictions. But Reed's point was unmistakable. If the border was secure, if U.S. weapons weren't flowing south, the military wouldn't still be there. The presence of soldiers proves the failure of policy. Let's step back. What did America see in that hearing? A DOJ that caved on regulating forced reset triggers, opening the door to machine gun-like fire on U.S. streets. An attorney general who blames immigrants instead of confronting the reality of domestic weapons manufacturing. A refusal to admit that American guns are fueling cartel wars just across our border. And a Secretary of Homeland Security turned Attorney General, more concerned with optics and political talking points than with protecting families from battlefield firepower. Reed called it what it is: dangerous, dishonest, and derelict. This matters because every day these devices remain legal, every day cartels and criminals find new loopholes, America grows less safe. It matters because the victims of the next mass shooting may be children in a classroom, shoppers in a mall, concertgoers at an outdoor festival. It matters because our southern neighbor is being torn apart with guns stamped made in the USA, while our leaders shrug and blame immigrants for the violence. It matters because when the Department of Justice abandons its mission, when it prioritizes political narratives over public safety, we the people are left unprotected. Senator Jack Reed didn't let Pam Bondi off the hook, and neither should we. His voice was the voice of a soldier who knows the stakes. His questions were the questions every parent, every teacher, every citizen should be asking. Why are machine gun-like weapons being allowed on our streets? Why is the DOJ settling instead of fighting to ban them? Why is our government ignoring the role American guns play in fueling cartel wars? Bondi's answers were evasions. Reed's questions were reality, and reality is what matters. If this exchange opened your eyes to what's really happening inside the DOJ, then don't just scroll away. Stay informed, subscribe, share this video, join us in exposing the spin and demanding accountability, because if the truth doesn't get told, the lies become policy. And as Jack Reed made clear, the cost of those lies is measured in lives, American lives, Mexican lives, the lives of innocent people caught between a gun dealer's loophole and a politician's talking point.